Power has a way of changing how people see themselves and how they see everyone else. When someone rises to a position of authority, especially in a competitive world like business, they often begin to believe that their success is proof of superiority in every area of life. It is not just about leading a company or making decisions anymore. It becomes about identity. The title, the office, the respect, and even the fear from others start to shape a mindset where being in charge feels the same as being better. Over time, this belief can quietly grow into ego, and ego has a subtle but dangerous way of distorting reality. Instead of seeing people as individuals with their own skills and experiences, those in power may begin to rank others based on status alone. The CEO in this story represents that exact mindset, someone who has won so often in his own arena that he assumes he cannot lose outside of it. His confidence is not limited to business decisions. It spills into a personal challenge, turning a simple game of chess into a stage to display dominance. The smirk on his face is not just about humor. It reflects certainty, the kind that comes from never being questioned or defeated in front of others. Authority can create an environment where no one pushes back, where people laugh along even when something feels wrong, and where silence is mistaken for agreement. This environment feeds ego because it removes friction, and without friction, there is no reason to reflect or doubt oneself. The CEO is surrounded by people who expect him to win, who reinforce his image as someone unbeatable, and that expectation becomes part of his identity. It is easy to see how power can isolate a person in this way, not physically, but mentally, cutting them off from honest feedback and real perspective. The challenge he throws out is not just a game. It is a statement, a way to remind everyone in the room of his position. By choosing a janitor as his opponent, he is also making an assumption, one that reveals how deeply power has influenced his thinking. He does not see the janitor as an equal participant in the moment, but as a symbol of someone beneath him, someone whose role defines their capability. This is where ego becomes dangerous, because it replaces curiosity with certainty. Instead of wondering who this person might be or what they might know, the CEO decides the outcome before the game even begins. In many real situations, this kind of thinking leads to poor decisions, missed opportunities, and unexpected failures. People in authority often rely on patterns that have worked for them before, but those patterns do not apply to every situation or every person. When ego is in control, it convinces them that it does. The room itself plays a role in strengthening this dynamic. The laughter, the attention, the unspoken agreement that this is just entertainment all contribute to the CEO's confidence. Social settings like this can amplify power, turning a simple interaction into a performance where the person in charge feels the need to maintain their image at all costs. That pressure can make them double down on their assumptions instead of questioning them. The CEO is not just playing chess. He is defending his identity as someone who always wins, and that mindset leaves no room for the possibility of being wrong. It also shows how power can blur the line between confidence and arrogance. Confidence is grounded in skill and awareness. It allows room for learning and respect. Arrogance, on the other hand, is built on the need to appear superior, often ignoring reality to protect that image. The CEO crosses that line without realizing it, using his position as proof that he cannot be challenged. This is a common pattern in leadership when success is not balanced with humility. The more someone is treated as exceptional, the more they may begin to expect it and eventually demand it, even in situations where it does not apply. Power, when left unchecked, creates a lens through which the world is simplified into winners and losers, leaders and followers, important and unimportant. It removes the complexity of human ability and replaces it with labels that feel easier to manage but are often misleading. Underestimating others rarely feels like a mistake in the moment. It often feels like certainty. People build quick judgments based on appearance, job titles, tone of voice, or even silence, and those judgments can seem so obvious that they go unquestioned. In environments where hierarchy is strong, these assumptions become even more automatic. Someone with a high position is expected to be capable, while someone in a lower role is often overlooked, not because of evidence, but because of habit. This kind of thinking saves time, but it also creates blind spots, and those blind spots can lead to moments where reality breaks through in unexpected ways. The danger lies in how comfortable these assumptions feel, how natural it becomes to dismiss someone without ever giving them a real chance to be seen. In the story, the janitor stands in a position that society typically labels as ordinary, invisible, or even insignificant. People pass by individuals in such roles every day without wondering about their experiences, their knowledge, or their potential. That lack of curiosity is not always intentional, but it is powerful. It shapes how interactions unfold, how opportunities are given, and how respect is distributed. When someone is underestimated, they are often placed in a box before they have spoken a single word. The CEO's challenge is built entirely on this assumption, not on any understanding of who the janitor actually is. He does not ask questions, does not hesitate, and does not consider the possibility that he might be wrong. Instead, he relies on a mental shortcut that tells him everything he needs to know based on status alone. This is what makes underestimation so risky. It replaces observation with assumption. It closes the door to new information before it even arrives. In many cases, people who are underestimated become used to it. They learn to move quietly, to let others believe what they want, and to reveal their abilities only when necessary. This can create a powerful contrast between perception and reality. While others are busy forming judgments, the underestimated individual is often observing, learning, and waiting for the right moment. That difference in approach can shift the balance in ways that are not immediately visible. The janitor in this situation is not just a participant in a game, but someone who carries knowledge that has been ignored simply because no one thought to look for it. This highlights another layer of the danger. Underestimation does not only affect how one person sees another, it affects how entire environments operate. When people are consistently judged by surface-level traits, talent can go unnoticed, ideas can be dismissed, and potential can remain hidden. Organizations, teams, and even social groups can suffer because they fail to recognize what is right in front of them. The CEO's mistake is not just personal, it reflects a broader pattern where people in power rely on assumptions instead of understanding. It is easy to believe that skill and intelligence follow visible markers like education, wealth, or job title, but real ability often exists outside those markers. Chess itself is a perfect example of this, a game that rewards strategy, patience, and foresight rather than status. Anyone who has dedicated time to learning it can become skilled, regardless of their background. By ignoring this reality, the CEO turns what could have been a fair challenge into a demonstration of his own bias. The confidence he feels is not based on evaluating his opponent, but on dismissing them entirely. This creates a fragile kind of confidence, one that depends on being right about others without ever testing that belief. When that belief is challenged, it does not just affect the outcome of a game. It disrupts the entire perception the person has built. Underestimation also carries an emotional impact. For the person being underestimated, it can be frustrating, but it can also become a source of quiet motivation. Being overlooked removes pressure in some ways, allowing them to act without the weight of expectation. At the same time, it can reinforce a sense of being unseen, which makes moments of recognition more powerful when they finally arrive. The contrast between how someone is perceived and what they are capable of creates tension, and that tension is often resolved in a single, defining moment. The janitor's presence in the story represents all those individuals who have been quietly underestimated, not because of what they lack, but because of what others fail to see. People often assume that talent follows visibility, that the more noticeable a role is, the more skill it must require. This way of thinking feels natural because society tends to celebrate what is seen and rewarded publicly, while overlooking what happens quietly in the background. Jobs that involve authority, decision-making, or public recognition are usually associated with intelligence and ability, while roles that are routine or service-based are rarely given the same level of respect. Over time, this creates a distorted view of where talent actually exists. It suggests that ability is tied to position, when in reality, talent can develop anywhere, in any environment, often without recognition. Hidden talent is not rare. It is simply unnoticed, waiting in places where people are not looking. In the story, the janitor represents this idea clearly, someone whose daily work does not draw attention or admiration, yet whose abilities extend far beyond what others assume. There is a quiet discipline in roles that go unnoticed, a kind of consistency that requires focus and patience. While others are occupied with visible achievements, individuals in these positions often develop skills in silence, without applause or validation. This can include anything from strategic thinking to creative problem solving, but because it is not displayed openly, it remains hidden beneath the surface. The janitor's knowledge of chess is not something that comes from his job title, but from personal effort, time invested, and a genuine interest in the game. This highlights an important truth, that talent is not granted by status. It is built through practice and dedication. When people overlook others based on their role, they ignore the possibility that those individuals have rich inner worlds, full of knowledge and capability. Hidden talent often thrives in environments where there is little pressure to perform publicly. Without the expectation to constantly prove oneself, a person can focus on learning for its own sake rather than for recognition. This kind of learning can be deeper and more intentional, driven by curiosity instead of competition. In contrast, those in highly visible roles may feel pressure to maintain their image, which can sometimes limit their willingness to explore beyond what they are already known for. The janitor's position allows him to exist outside of that pressure, giving him the freedom to develop skills without needing approval. This creates a situation where someone who appears ordinary may actually possess extraordinary ability, simply because they have had the space to grow without interference. Another important aspect of hidden talent is how easily it can be dismissed before it is even revealed. People tend to rely on quick judgments to navigate social interactions, and those judgments often prioritize appearance over substance. A uniform, a job title, or even body language can influence how someone is perceived, leading others to make assumptions about their intelligence or capability. These assumptions act as filters, shaping what people notice and what they ignore. When someone is labeled as unimportant, their actions are less likely to be taken seriously, even if those actions demonstrate skill. This creates a cycle where hidden talent remains hidden, not because it does not exist, but because it is not given the opportunity to be seen. The janitor's challenge to the CEO breaks this cycle, forcing a moment where ability cannot be ignored. It shifts attention away from titles and toward performance, revealing a truth that was always present but never acknowledged. Hidden talent also challenges the idea of hierarchy as a measure of worth. It shows that value is not always aligned with visibility, and that people cannot be fully understood through their roles alone. Every individual carries experiences, interests, and skills that exist beyond what is immediately visible. By recognizing this, it becomes possible to approach others with curiosity instead of assumption. The janitor's presence in the story serves as a reminder that talent does not announce itself. It does not demand attention or recognition. It exists quietly, shaped by effort and passion, waiting for a moment when it can no longer be overlooked. Confidence and arrogance can look similar on the surface, but they come from very different places and lead to very different outcomes. Confidence is usually built over time through experience, practice, and an honest understanding of one's strengths and limits. It allows a person to trust their abilities without needing constant validation from others. Arrogance, on the other hand, often grows from unchecked success and the desire to appear superior. It depends heavily on comparison, on being seen as better than someone else rather than simply being capable. In situations where power is involved, the line between the two can become blurred, especially when there is no one willing to challenge that behavior. A person may start with genuine confidence, but over time, if their environment keeps reinforcing their superiority, that confidence can slowly shift into arrogance without them noticing. In the story, the CEO stands at that exact point where the shift has already happened. His belief in his own ability is no longer grounded in reality, but in the assumption that he cannot be matched, especially by someone he considers beneath him. Confidence would allow him to approach the game with focus and respect, understanding that any opponent could present a challenge. Arrogance removes that awareness and replaces it with certainty, making the outcome feel predetermined before the first move is even made. The way he presents the challenge reveals this difference clearly. There is no sense of curiosity or genuine interest in the game itself, only a desire to assert dominance and entertain the idea of an easy victory. His smirk is not just a sign of confidence. It is a signal that he does not take the situation seriously, that he has already dismissed the possibility of losing. This mindset limits his ability to think clearly because it closes off the need to prepare or adapt. Confidence keeps a person alert, aware that anything can happen. Arrogance makes them careless, assuming that nothing will go wrong. This difference becomes critical in moments that require quick thinking and strategy, such as a game of chess. Every move in chess depends on reading the opponent, anticipating their actions, and adjusting accordingly. A confident player respects this process and stays engaged, while an arrogant player may overlook small details, believing they are unnecessary. This creates opportunities for mistakes, not because the person lacks skill, but because they are not fully paying attention. The CEO's attitude shapes the way he approaches the game, likely causing him to underestimate the importance of each move and the possibility that his opponent might be thinking several steps ahead. Arrogance also affects how a person responds to unexpected outcomes. Confidence allows for flexibility, the ability to accept mistakes and adjust without losing composure. Arrogance, however, is fragile because it is tied to the need to always be right. When something challenges that belief, it can create a sense of shock or denial. The CEO's reaction to losing is likely more intense because he did not consider it a real possibility. His identity is built on winning, so losing becomes more than just a result. It feels like a threat to how he sees himself. This is why arrogance can be dangerous. It creates a false sense of control that cannot hold up under pressure. The moment reality does not match expectation, the entire mindset begins to crack. Another important difference lies in how others perceive and respond to these traits. Confidence tends to earn respect because it feels stable and grounded. People are more likely to trust someone who acknowledges both their strengths and limitations. Arrogance, while it may command attention, often creates distance. It can make others feel dismissed or undervalued, especially if they are on the receiving end of that attitude. In the story, the people in the room may laugh along with the CEO, but that laughter is likely influenced by his position rather than genuine agreement. Social dynamics often encourage people to support those in power, even when their behavior crosses into arrogance. This creates an environment where arrogance is not corrected, allowing it to grow unchecked. Over time, this can isolate the person in power, surrounding them with agreement instead of honesty. The CEO's behavior reflects this isolation, as he seems unaware of how his actions might be perceived or what risks they carry. Confidence would allow him to engage with others as equals, recognizing that ability is not defined by status. Arrogance prevents that connection, reinforcing a divide between himself and those around him. This divide becomes especially clear when he chooses his opponent, not based on skill, but based on appearance and role, turning what could have been a fair interaction into a display of misplaced certainty the moment the game begins. Everything still feels predictable to those watching. The CEO sits with the same relaxed posture, carrying the confidence that this will be quick and effortless. The board is set, the pieces are arranged, and the atmosphere still carries a sense of amusement rather than tension. No one in the room expects anything unusual to happen, and that expectation shapes how they pay attention. Most are likely only half-focused, waiting for the inevitable outcome they believe is already decided. The janitor, however, approaches the board differently. There is no performance in his movements, no need to impress or entertain. His focus is quiet and direct, centered entirely on the game itself. This contrast is subtle, but it marks the beginning of a shift that no one fully notices yet. The first move is made, simple and clean, nothing dramatic, nothing that raises suspicion. To an untrained eye, it might look ordinary, just another opening move among countless possibilities. The CEO responds quickly, almost casually, as if the speed of his reaction confirms his control over the situation. There is no pause to consider deeper strategy, no sign that he feels the need to be cautious. The rhythm of the game seems normal, at least on the surface, but underneath, something is already unfolding. The janitor's second move introduces a layer that is not immediately obvious. It is precise, intentional, and part of a pattern that only becomes clear when viewed as a whole. To those who are not paying close attention, it still appears harmless, another routine step in a game that is expected to end quickly. The CEO mirrors this lack of concern, continuing with a response that aligns with his assumption of superiority. His focus remains shallow, directed more toward maintaining his image than analyzing the board. This is where the turning point begins to take shape, not as a sudden shock, but as a quiet buildup of small decisions that lead toward a single outcome. By the time the third move is played, the shift becomes undeniable, but only for those who understand what they are seeing. The janitor's move is not just another step. It is a conclusion, the final piece in a sequence that has been carefully constructed from the very beginning. In chess, certain patterns allow for a checkmate in just a few moves, but they rely heavily on the opponent making specific mistakes. These mistakes are often driven by overconfidence, by the assumption that there is no real threat to consider. The CEO, unaware of the trap forming around him, walks directly into it. His earlier decisions, made without full attention, have limited his options in a way he did not anticipate. What seemed like a simple game suddenly reveals itself as something far more complex. The moment of realization does not arrive gradually, it hits all at once. The board, which once felt like a space of control, now reflects a position with no escape. The janitor does not need to say anything. The arrangement of the pieces speaks for itself. The room, which was filled with light laughter and casual observation, falls into a different kind of silence. It is not just surprise, but a shift in understanding, as everyone present recalculates what they thought they knew. The CEO's expression changes, the smirk fading as the reality of the situation becomes clear. This is not just a loss, it is a collapse of expectation, a moment where certainty is replaced by undeniable fact. The speed of the outcome makes it even more striking. 3 moves feel too short to process, too quick for something so definitive. It challenges the assumption that skill always reveals itself over time, showing instead that sometimes it appears in an instant, leaving no room for doubt. The turning point is not just the final move, but everything that led to it. The overlooked details, the ignored possibilities, the quiet confidence of one player against the loud certainty of another. The contrast between the two becomes fully visible in this moment. One built on careful thought and awareness, the other on assumption and display. The game ends before it ever feels like it truly began, but the impact of that ending extends far beyond the board, reshaping how everyone in the room sees what just happened. Respect is often given based on what is visible, not what is real. People tend to assign value to others by looking at titles, clothing, roles, or the way someone carries themselves in public. These signals are easy to read and quick to process, which is why they become the default way of forming opinions. The problem is that they only show a small part of the truth, and sometimes they show the least important part. Perception fills in the gaps where understanding is missing, and once a perception is formed, it can be difficult to change. It shapes how people listen, how they respond, and even how much attention they are willing to give. In many situations, respect is not earned through direct interaction, but assumed through these surface-level cues, which creates an imbalance where some individuals are automatically valued while others are overlooked. In the story, this imbalance is clear from the very beginning. The CEO receives respect not only because of his position, but because everyone expects him to deserve it. His words carry weight, his actions draw attention, and his confidence reinforces the idea that he is someone to be taken seriously. The janitor, in contrast, exists outside of that circle of recognition. His role places him in the background, where his presence is acknowledged only when necessary. This difference in perception shapes how both individuals are treated before a single move is made on the chessboard. It also influences how the audience reacts, creating an environment where one person is supported by assumption while the other is limited by it. The challenge itself highlights how easily respect can be misplaced. It is offered freely to the one who appears powerful, while being withheld from the one who has not been given a reason to be seen differently. This dynamic reveals how much of human interaction depends on expectation rather than evidence. People do not always wait to observe ability before forming opinions. They rely on patterns they have learned over time. These patterns can be useful, but they can also be misleading, especially when they prevent someone from seeing beyond the surface. The moment the game begins, perception still dominates the room. Most people are not watching to learn something new. They are watching to confirm what they already believe. The CEO is expected to win, and the janitor is expected to lose. This expectation influences how each move is interpreted, with early actions likely dismissed as insignificant simply because they do not fit the narrative that has already been created. It takes a clear disruption to break that pattern, something that cannot be explained away or ignored. When the turning point arrives, it forces a shift not just in the outcome of the game, but in how everyone present understands what they are seeing. The same people who overlooked the janitor now have to reconsider their assumptions, realizing that their perception was incomplete. This shift is often uncomfortable because it exposes how quickly and confidently they form judgments without enough information. Respect, in this moment, begins to detach from status and reconnect with ability. It becomes less about who someone is supposed to be and more about what they have actually demonstrated. The janitor does not ask for recognition, but his actions make it unavoidable. This is where the true lesson begins to take shape, showing that respect should not be based on position alone, but on awareness and openness to what others can offer. Perception, while useful, needs to be flexible, able to adjust when new information appears. Without that flexibility, it becomes a barrier rather than a tool, limiting understanding instead of supporting it. The CEO's experience reflects the cost of rigid perception. By relying too heavily on assumptions, he not only misjudges his opponent, but also misjudges the situation itself. This leads to a loss that could have been avoided with a different mindset, one that values observation over assumption. The contrast between how respect is given at the beginning and how it is earned by the end highlights the gap between appearance and reality, showing how easily people can be misread when perception is allowed to replace genuine understanding.